Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So this video is a nice day trip I took recently. I went up to Pie in the Sky with a friend of mine on his Harley and me on the trusty Tiger 900 Rally Pro. The plan was to head up to the Pie in the Sky for lunch and then carry on up into the Watagans. This is pretty much the closest real off-roading you can get to Sydney, particularly when you're heading north from Sydney. I've done this run a few times, and this time I was kind of keen to find this place I'd heard about, which was a mysterious green wall hidden in one of these valleys. And then I would head back down the freeway back to Sydney. So if you're looking to get to your destination as quick as possible, the best way is just to stay on the freeway heading north. But most motorcyclists prefer the twisty corners of the old Pacific Highway, and so myself and my mate exited and headed up towards one of the cafes that are popular with motorcyclists, especially on the weekends. There's something really exciting about being out for a ride and seeing a lot of other guys out for a ride at the same time. And I was really enjoying the sounds and the sights of the other bikes going past. Heading into Pie in the Sky Cafe, I always get a warm glow when I see so many other like-minded individuals on their bikes out for a good day. After a short break at Pie in the Sky, we headed off down the windy stretch of the highway towards Hawkesbury before I carried on where the Harley cannot go. There are a million ways into the Watagans and Olney State Forest, and the way I chose to go was to get in as far south as possible, which is the Jillaby area. So to get there, you continue up the M1 motorway and take the exit towards Wyong. This takes you through some beautiful farmland, and there are a few tricky turns, so one tip is just to set your navigation towards Jillaby Lookout, which is pretty much just a point on the map at the start of the Olney State Forest. When I first arrived, I saw this, it looked to be abandoned horse float. But obviously wasn't abandoned, and it wasn't long up the road before I found the horses and riders. I stopped here to test out my new little gadget, which is this fantastic lithium battery powered tyre pump. I think it would be quite a slow thing to pump up a car tyre, or especially a four-wheel drive tyre, but for motorbike tyres it's actually perfect. And so I did something I'm usually a bit too lazy to do, which is to let down the air on my tyres when I got to the off-road section. I was planning to have quite a long off-road trip today, so I thought it was worth doing. And of course, don't forget to set it into off-road mode. This road has certainly seen better days, and I remember coming up here 5 or 6 years ago and it being a fairly smooth run. But now it's extra challenging with quite a lot of rutting and washouts. I think they do grade it every so often, but it must have been quite a while since the last grading. It was just great to be out in the bush after spending time on the freeway and in the city. The bike was feeling incredible, very comfortable. I'd adjusted the suspension down to reduce the rebound and compression damping, just to free up the suspension a bit more, make it a bit looser over this rough terrain, and the bike was floating along beautifully. A few videos back I was talking about how I was switching over to off-road pro mode, but for this I decided to stick with the regular off-road mode just to have a tiny bit of traction control on the rear wheel. It actually worked pretty well and I was still getting some very good pickup on the rear wheel. So coming up here, I've actually been here before in a four-wheel drive and it was quite a challenging hill climb, and I was using the rear diff lock and really relying on that for this part. And I was curious to know the difference on a particular stretch that I knew well in the four-wheel drive, how it would feel on the Tiger 900. So my first impression is that the suspension on the Tiger is just on another planet compared to the suspension of a four-wheel drive. You just get so much more travel, and the bike itself is so much lighter than a vehicle. You can really skip and jump up this sort of track. And I suppose the other difference is with a bike you only have to pick one line, you don't have to worry about two sets of wheels. It does get a bit harder though, because with a car you can inch up bit by bit and carefully choose your line. With a motorbike you really do need to commit to keeping the speed up, which can make it a bit tricky to quickly decide which line to take. So coming up here to this power line, this is really what the map says is Jillaby Lookout. Not much of a lookout, but it's a good waypoint to know that you're pretty much at the start of the journey through the forest. The road wasn't getting any better and I was having to go quite slowly and pick my line even on the main road. This looks like a fire trail, but it is actually the main road heading up through the Olney State Forest towards the Watagans. I'm a bit paranoid about gates since my little incident down at Bulio, but it looks like there are plenty of options to go around this one on a bike, so at least I wouldn't be shut in. enjoying the day out. And I quite like being on these open-ended explorations where I don't really know if I'm going to find what I'm looking for. I decided to head up this power line trail just to break up the journey a bit, and I came across a young family with their teenage son out playing on his dirt bike. As I said, it was a long weekend, so I said hi to these good folks. I didn't really feel like the muddy challenge here. My boots were still too clean. I wonder where I'd park my car. A bit of a fixer-upper, but with a lick of paint she'll be good as new. Thought it was time to get back on the road and head back north along the main road here, still looking for that green wall. I was tempted by this fire trail, but decided maybe it wasn't the right one for me. One of the great things about riding fairly close to home is that you feel a bit more game to take risks and try some tougher terrain. On my recent trip down to the Victorian High Country, I was definitely more conscious of being so far from home. If I was to have a crash or damage the bike, it would be a bit more of a mission to get some recovery organised. But up here, I'm really only an hour and a half from home, so I was happy to ride the bike a bit harder. So this power line trail pretty much turned into nothing fairly quickly, and I was just going over overgrown matted grass before it came to a complete dead end up here, so I headed back. Getting so much good traction from the Continental TKC 80s, really loving these tyres. I'm not sure what to try next, maybe the Motos rallies with the dual venture front. I've heard some good reports of that combination. Being the long weekend, there were even more people out and about, and there was a nice little makeshift camp that some folks had made up here. And I continued north up the Watan Forest road. Even though I was still a long way from finding the green wall that I was looking for, I couldn't resist heading up one more fire trail. Of all the fire trails I could have picked, I don't know why I ended up choosing this one. It pretty much descended into a bush bash within 100 meters, and I found myself dropping the visor just so that I could push my helmeted head through the undergrowth. Managed to squeeze my head under this branch. I just wish I'd remembered to do the same thing on the way back up. Well, you'd like to think that would have knocked a bit of sense into me, but I'm sure I'll be heading down a similar sort of fire trail in the not too distant future. Now that I was pretty much out of Jillaby and heading into the Watagans themselves, the road condition of the Watan Forest road was getting better and better. A lot of people access this from the north, coming down from the Hunter Valley in Newcastle, and being a long weekend there were actually quite a lot of cars and campers about. There's some good free camping in the forest. Being a state forest, there's no booking system, you just show up and if there's a spot you camp there, which also means you don't have to pay anything. I gave in to temptation again and headed up another fire trail just to give the bike a good run. It really is amazing where this thing will take you. It is on the larger side, although I guess it is a mid-sized adventure bike. It's still a pretty big bike, but if you ride it like a trail bike, it can cope with pretty much anything. I finally saw a sign for Boarding House Dam, which is where I'd heard the green wall was, so I knew I wasn't too far away. And heading down off the Watan Forest Drive down towards the picnic area, I realised I had the place to myself. Suddenly coming to a stop after riding for so many hours, I was struck by how quiet it was and the noises of the forest. And then I found myself in this Blair Witch Project kind of hunt through the forest for this green wall. It was certainly peaceful, but I was pleased to be back on the bike. Before I knew it, I was out the other end of the forest and back onto tar. So I pulled over and pumped the air back into my tyres with my handy little tyre pump and started to think about where I'd get fuel. Well, it had been another cracking day on the bike and I was looking forward to heading back home the quick way on the freeway to get some dinner. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for everyone who's subscribed. It really makes a difference. See you all on the next video.